It began with a scream so sharp it cut through the morning air, loud enough to crack windows. It wasn't from me or my family, but from a woman named Karen, perched on a pink flamingo float in my cattle pond, her mimosa splashing as a hefty Angus cow nudged her into the murky water. Just moments before, she'd been shouting through a megaphone, announcing a fancy brunch to a crowd of oblivious guests who didn't know they were trespassing on my land. Now, she was flailing in a mess of cow drool, algae, and mud, her sundress a soggy wreck as my herd waded in for an uninvited swim. The best part? She had no clue I'd opened the gate on purpose. 2 days earlier, I'd noticed a line of unfamiliar cars winding along the old trail behind my barn. At first, I thought it was a lost delivery driver. Happens often enough on these gravel roads. But this wasn't a UPS truck. It was a parade of shiny SUVs and sedans, at least a dozen, parked like they owned the place. I followed the thump of music and laughter around the bend, and what I saw stopped me dead. My cattle pond, a working livestock watering hole, had been turned into a reality TV set. Giant inflatable animals floated on the water, a fake tiki bar sat on my dock, and white folding chairs lined the bank, filled with women in sun hats sipping cocktails like they were at a resort. Leading the charge was Karen, impossible to miss with her oversized sunglasses, clipboard, and a voice that could split rock. She'd declared herself president of the new HOA across the road, acting like her authority extended to my property. That day, she strutted around like she'd just hosted a Hollywood gala on my land. When she spotted me, her smile was as fake as a used car salesman's. "Oh, hi," she chirped, like we were chatting over coffee. "Isn't this weather perfect?" She waved at a banner stretched across my pond, Tranquil Waters Bridal Brunch. My livestock watering hole was now a wedding party venue for some stranger, and she hadn't even asked. I took a deep breath, trying to process the audacity. Karen sauntered over, her heels sinking into the dirt, and handed me a laminated itinerary. Brunch, paddleboat photos, a harpist, yoga in my hayfield. She had the nerve to say I should be grateful for the exposure. I didn't shout or curse. I smiled, because while she thought I was backing down, I was already scheming. I excused myself, headed to the barn, and called my friend Emma, a wedding planner. She laughed so hard she nearly choked, but confirmed Karen had no permits or permission. Her advice? Let it play out, document everything, and let the cows have the final say. For the next day and a half, I watched Karen and her crew turn my property into a Pinterest nightmare. Portable toilets rolled in, they hung fairy lights on my trees, and tried draping fabric from my grain silo like it was a photo backdrop. My cows chewed cud, staring at the spectacle with the same mix of amusement and offense I felt. Karen's team set up flimsy barriers, plastic and string to keep the herd out, as if my cows wouldn't trample that in seconds. By Sunday morning, the place reeked of hairspray and entitlement, two things my cattle can't stand. As Karen launched into a brunch speech about community vision, I strolled to the pasture gate and gave it a slow, deliberate creak. No fuss, just the quiet patience of a man who knows cows love chaos. They saw the gap, smelled the food, and ambled down the slope like furry bulldozers on a mission. The first cow sniffed an inflatable peacock, shoved it aside, and waded into the pond. Others followed, mooing gleefully. By the time Karen noticed, it was pure pandemonium. A guest shrieked as a cow sniffed her drink. Another wrestled her purse from a steer licking sunscreen off it. Karen lost it, demanding I corral my beasts. I reminded her, in front of her soggy guests, that this was my land, my pond, my animals, and she was the trespasser. She called 911, claiming a cow attack. The deputy who arrived barely hid his grin as he surveyed the chaos. Karen dripping wet, a cow chewing a duck-shaped floatie. He asked if she had permission to be here. Her clipboard, soaked and useless, offered no defense. When he asked if I wanted to press charges, I declined. I had bigger plans, ones that didn't involve courtrooms but promised plenty of country justice. By the end, guests were fleeing, mud-stained and sandal-less. Karen's niece sobbed on a hay bale, her veil crooked as a cow nibbled her sash. The harpist had bolted. The yoga instructor was trapped behind a toppled buffet table. My cows, though, they were living their best lives. As Karen screamed about lawsuits and called me every name in her HOA handbook, I leaned on the fence, sipped my coffee, and smiled. Sometimes, the best way to handle entitlement is with chaos and a herd that knows its cue. But Karen wasn't done. Most people would have slunk away after that humiliation. Not her. 3 days later, I caught a drone buzzing over my pond, circling my cattle like a vulture. I grabbed a shovel not to swat it, but to make a point and raised it high. The drone zipped off toward the HOA houses. By afternoon, complaints flooded the HOA inbox. My cows were noise polluters, their methane a health hazard. Karen even posted a drone video of a bull relieving himself, captioned environmental biohazard. I laughed, then stopped when a nuisance abatement officer showed up, citing anonymous reports. I was ready. I called my cousin Mike, a USDA inspector, who arrived with a grin and a stack of records, water tests, manure logs, USDA certifications. The inspector took one look, snapped a few photos, and muttered about wasted gas. My ranch was cleaner than most suburbs. Karen kept pushing. She went door to door, collecting signatures for a cow-free zone, claiming my herd tanked property values. She handed out pamphlets with photoshopped cows stealing pool floats. A neighbor tipped me off that she was pitching the story to local media. That's when I decided to flip the script. I called Ryan, a news anchor who owed me a favor, and pitched a segment. Farmer fights back, cows versus HOA. The crew filmed my cows being brushed by kids, Mike explaining regulations, and that flamingo float bobbing in the pond. The story aired in prime time and went viral. Social media roasted Karen as the fun police. Her niece even posted a TikTok laughing about the brunch disaster. Donations poured into a farm charity I'd mentioned, and a bakery offered to sponsor a cow-themed event. That sparked an idea. If Karen wanted my pond as her battleground, I'd make it my stage. I threw a sunset event called Moo at the Moon. Games, cow meet and greets, food trucks, open to all, HOA included. Kids hugged calves, teens snapped selfies with a sunglass-wearing cow, and the mayor showed up with his dog. Karen lurked at the edges, binoculars in hand, but I ignored her. A banner reading "Respect the Herd" fluttered overhead, caught by the local paper. She fired back with a legal threat, claiming my event caused traffic and wildlife disturbance. Mike forwarded it to the state AG board, who sent her a warning. Stop harassing a working farm or face fines. She went quiet for a week, then resurfaced with a podcaster, thinking she could spin the narrative. I showed up with the brunch video, news clips, and a calm recounting of her trespass. The podcaster shut off his camera and left. Karen was deflated, but I sensed she wasn't done. I was right. Whispers spread that she was attending zoning meetings, pulling maps, meeting county officials. Her plan? Reclassify my pond as a shared water feature under an obscure rural clause, arguing it visually impacted the community, giving the HOA oversight. A hearing notice arrived, calling my pond a community watershed. I was floored that watering hole was mine, always had been. I called Mike, who hooked me up with a land use lawyer. We compiled deeds, maps, photos, neighbor testimonies, and USDA letters proving the pond's private agricultural status. At the hearing, Karen gave an Oscar-worthy performance. PowerPoint slides of pond scum and paintball kids, waxing poetic about serenity and aesthetic rights. I didn't need slides. I had facts, 30 years of records, satellite images, state codes, and notarized statements. The board didn't blink. One asked Karen for proof the pond wasn't private. She had none. They ruled unanimously, my pond, my rules. They warned her against abusing zoning processes. I walked out into the sun, leaving her stewing. I wasn't done. I hosted Moo Fest, food trucks, hay rides, a flamingo float photo booth. The community showed up, even HOA folks tired of the drama. T-shirts read "Pond Owners Since Forever." Karen didn't come, but her house hit the market soon after, touting pond views that cropped out my paintball range and a giant cow painting on my barn. Rumor was she fled to a gated community far from mooing. As Moo Fest wound down, I sat on my porch, the pond glinting under the moon. The flamingo float spun lazily, nudged by a cow. Karen had fought dirty, but she'd never understood. You can't fake belonging, not on land that knows every boot, every hoof, every fight.